All right. Quentin, you're at the top of the boxes. What do you got?
I'm trying to think about that answer to that. So been working on some documentation stuff, trying to work on hardening DocAssembly a bit. We spent some time in our coding meeting this week, deep dive, talking about some ways to approach making DocAssembly more resistant to users having to see errors. And I think I have some more ideas to keep exploring there. Literally today, Jonathan released a new version of DocAssembly, which I think might have some good fixes for some of the accessibility issues that pop up when you do an automated audit of the DocAssembly site. It's also going to break a bunch of our code, so we should look carefully at it and make sure like all of our styles still work with the new version of Bootstrap is the big change. We upgraded to Bootstrap 5. And I've gotten some more progress on the guardianship petition. But, it's a big one with a lot of refinement stuff. So that will be ongoing. Hopefully we'll be able to get something the next couple of weeks towards the end of the year that's more runnable and it's easier to see the shape of.
Cool.
That's pretty much it.
Cool. Michelle.
Hello. So I wanted to say that as far as contrast goes, I think Bootstrap hasn't taken care of that yet, but I think that wasn't the majority of the accessibility errors that you got, if I recall correctly, Quentin.
No, Jonathan thought it did, so I'm not sure if he was just using like one automated tool like we did, the Wave tool. He said he thought that the was better, but I mean, it wasn't too far off, we were saying. So we'll see. If it's not, we'll still have to fix that on our own. But regardless, we don't want to be off version, so we'll need to bite the bullet and do some upgrades there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually one thing that stuck out to me though, Michelle, that you might not have caught from his patch notes is there's a new feature that lets you add content to the navigation bar component. So we could use that for our escape button.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's a great idea.
To use that. So it's going forward.
That would be great. I would rather not be injecting JavaScript, or at least inject as little JavaScript as necessary onto the page.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, if this lets you kind of, okay, well, we'll work on other stuff too.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple more patches coming out soon to fix some little glitches. So we're not going to rush to upgrade our site, at least for like a week or two, until see if there's more interim
forthcoming.
There's more coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have, I think, anything to report. Thomas hasn't gotten back in touch with me. I'm not sure if that was supposed to happen or wasn't. But I'll see if Sarah...
I wouldn't read anything into that. I think that's fine. I think he's working on his right now. He's trying to focus on flow charting, workflow, research stuff.
Sure. Okay. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need right now. Nope, I saw the message from Sarah, and if I can help, I will help. I think I'm good.
All right. Caroline, good to see you.
Thanks. I'm just trying to catch up. I feel like I have been underwater and out to sea for months now. So I was trying last week, it was hopeless. So this week I'm actually starting to figure out what's what and caught up on emails. Is this a stand-up or is this admin or is it what is this? This
is stand-up and tactical together.
Okay.
It's Tuesday and Friday in one day.
Okay, I saw your email somewhere. I saw something about that on Tuesday. So I just have a question. I was supposed to meet with Barb this morning about the she had a TIG for stuff that Quentin did, and then Quentin got Bryce to help for my bit and everything. And then when Quentin's saying Jonathan's just put out a new version of DocAssemble. Of course, I'm like, DocAssemble server. What are you guys thinking about hosting the Social Security stuff and the obligor response to child support? Would you want those on the court forms online, or should we put them on? I mean, I just wanted to see, I'm not pushing one way or the other. Obviously, if we put them, if you don't want them on court forms online, I will continue doing the Mass Legal Help DocAssemble server. And we talked a little bit about that before, because you guys are trying to figure out, do you just want to do court forms online? Because obviously as Mass Legal Help, we're going to start adding things like administrative stuff and letters and things like that. So I don't know what you want me to do about that. I know, and I'm going to talk with her this afternoon. I was supposed to talk with her this morning. The conversation got pushed back to this afternoon. I thought perfect timing, because I'll check in with you guys. I don't know if you've talked to her about this already, or what you want to do, or whether you want to think about it, etc.
Yeah, Barbara did ask me about that. And so we're linking to the form. I don't think to the obligor form. Barbara asked me about that. And
yeah. Obligor's on our development server right now. We haven't pushed it to production yet.
Oh, it's not on production at all, even on, okay. So we have funding to maintain DocAssemble servers for at least 2 years, right? I don't know if you have thoughts, David, about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends upon, I mean, before our sort of, it was all sort of capacity driven. I was thinking along the lines of where it was produced. So if we produced it in the assembly line, then we'd host it on Core Forms Online. And if you guys produced it independently, then you guys, were hosting it yourselves. I mean, there's a conversation to be had. How many DocAssemble forms do you guys host? I mean, what is your constellation of stuff look like?
Right now we've got like 5 or 6. I mean, there's stuff that we're starting to, so, and this, I don't know, this wouldn't be a Court Forms Online, but Katie Milton has been doing things like we're almost finished. There's some subpoenas, but those are actually court forms. And those could be DocAssemble forms. Because there's 2 types of subpoenas now. There's subpoenaing the person and subpoenaing the records. The court just changed that to the subpoena forms to 2 forms. Those could be court forms online. They're not DocAssemble assemblies yet, but those are in the pipeline to be developed. And then she's just now finishing also a motion to get your spouse to pay your your lawyer's fee, attorney fees. So that's a court form in that it's a motion, but it's not a court form, right?
Yeah. Well, we definitely house motions and stuff.
Yeah, right. Because there's all the housing stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think what else we have. The financial statement is something that was Lily's first DocAssemble interview. That's not live. That's a court form. Sarah's messing around with this DTA form, which the benefits people are like, Sarah's doing a great job on the DTA authorized representative form, but benefits people are like saying, oh, we don't know if anybody's ever going to use this. We don't tell people to use it, but it's still, I think Sarah's doing a great job. And I think some people might, if we have it on Mass Legal Help, but that's actually more of a Mass Legal Help document, but produced in the assembly line. So that would be on your server. So it's kind of a mishmash.
I mean, this is a conversation, like a conversation for the lab to have a little internally as well at some point. But I mean that I'm not. I don't want to volunteer the lab for anything, but I do recognize the benefit of maybe just having a central one server that is being maintained. But I do also really like the fact that you guys have your own, and that you guys can then there never has to be a question of what you guys can do, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. So if we
get limited by funders and this and that.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess like that's one thing to think about for sure, Caroline. Is like if we sign this agreement with the court saying only Suffolk people who sign this thing could log on and be admins on the server.
Right. I mean, that's not, I mean, as long as we're who we are, you know, it's not a big deal because I have an account, you know, I have a development account and I can in GitHub and in assembly line and I can push it and say, can we update it? There's that, but I just don't know about restrictions. I mean, in some ways it makes more sense to have it be central because you guys keep it up and you're not doing 9 million other things. And, you know, and basically you, Quentin, you always help me anyway, or Bryce does, you know,
Right.
because I'm always running into problems. I'm a little freaked out about Jonathan updating this version of DocAssembly. I don't know what to do about it. But I mean, I guess we've talked, you know, it's one of these conversations we keep talking about, like the future of the server and who's going to host it and how we're going to do this. And you guys want to be kind of, in a way, national, but then somebody's got to take it on, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I'm fine to have it for the next couple of years, still be flexible and say, okay, who developed these interviews? Where does it want to live? And we don't have to come down, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to come down hard on a policy right now, but it's definitely something to think about. And you know, do you, if you're, so the child support obligor, I don't know if that's not, I checked with Mariah. It's not on the court forms online. The Social Security stuff is on court forms online. Is, you know what, I mean, I don't know, it's hosted, but it's
just linked to, it's not on, it's not.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We're happy to,
Linking
I think the real question is we don't want to get into a situation where you've made something that then, you know, some future agreement we have with a court or something like. That being said, if there was and we don't want to get in the business of, generally we don't want to get in the business of hosting other people's forums, just because that adds a layer of complexity that we're not sure. But to the extent that we can think of forms that are the communities, right? You know, like the ones we're already working on, then I'm fine. I think that makes sense for them. If there truly are sort of community forums that we're building together for them to live with us. I guess the question is that number of forms large enough that you don't want to maintain your own server, or
I'm just gonna look real quick to see what we actually have.
The smaller the number is, the more it makes sense for us to combine forces, right? If we're
Right.
like dozens of forms, it would be harder, make less sense. I mean, I think one thing to keep in mind is we're never gonna like say, hey, direct link to a DocAssembly server from like on some advertising in the greater world. Like, you know, people can't find a DocAssembly server from Google easily because of the robots.txt default. So it's always like just a matter of, hey, if we stop being able to offer this in a year, even though we know it's 2 years, Mass Legal Help could update their links to point to a different place and not have to wait for us to do that, right?
Can you I'm not following what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying.
Mass Legal Help website that goes to a DocAssembly server. Our server went down tomorrow. Even if you had moved everything over to our server, you could still start your own server back up at any point and just change
and point to it. Yeah.
That is, if you had a redirect from your page.
Yeah, that
then
I
you could have a
understand that we can
redirect.
link. Yeah, that second part I understood. The first part I wasn't understanding. Were you saying that I thought you were saying you never link directly to a DocAssembly server. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, you don't share the link to the DocAssembly server, right? You share the link to your landing page. That's what you give out to people on a poster or a flyer or on Google.
Oh, yeah. I gotcha. Oh, I understand now. Okay, right. Okay, I didn't understand what you were saying. Right. Okay.
There just wouldn't be a cost. There wouldn't be a very high cost to swapping out the URL.
I see. Yeah, that I understand. I totally misunderstood that. So on court forms online, those links do go to the server. But when we're sending out PR and stuff, we say go to this page, and it's always a
Yeah.
web page. That okay, fine,
Yep,
that I understand.
And web
All right.
crawlers don't
I was
tend
like-
to generally
I
crawl
thought-
them.
Yeah, that I understand. Okay, I didn't get what you were saying.
But that's
Okay, right.
yeah, that's just a question about like the cost it would be to you guys if we disappeared.
Right.
I don't want like I could easily be convinced either way based upon people's arguments. I think at the end of the day, it's a longer conversation I'd want to have with Quentin and Bryce about support and implications, because I don't want to volunteer stuff. There's also a possibility we could avoid some of the concerns we have around, there might be a synergy here, right? And in that, if we could make some type of formal relationship to our informal relationship,
Mhm.
that might give us, I don't know if that looks like in kind, to like, formalize some of your time, right? Like if your
Yeah.
time is formalized as like an in kind donation, and then our time and server is formalized as, and like, if we formalize that somehow so that we can say, oh, well, this is not controlled by
court
these
thing.
constraints we
Yeah.
have over here.
Yeah.
And we're floating this under this other rubric, then there might be a way to do that. I just don't want to get over our skis as far as like overextending ourselves.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. The last thing you want to do, although informally you actually are supporting, I mean, I'm working on keeping the Mass Legal Help DocAssembly servers going, and you guys are helping me a huge amount. But
Yeah.
we don't want to formally have you guys committed to keep up maintaining for 17 servers,
Yeah.
right? So that there's
Well,
that.
if we were doing something, we'd probably move your stuff over so it was all on one server. The other thing that I worry about, and this is one that you would know better, is that I worry about if we take the DocAssembly away from being under your control, does that then make it less likely for you guys to develop stuff in DocAssembly? Because I would hate that to be like an unintentional consequence of like, oh, well,
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, if we were gonna move everything to your server, then we would ask people to get development accounts on your server. And right now, the only
Yeah.
people who have development accounts for us are, I don't know if Mariah has a development account on your server. And Kendall is, who knows where Kendall is. Every time I drive through Indianapolis, I wave at the city. I don't know where he is. And that's it. And Lily, and she already is, I don't know, Lily must be developing on your servers now, right? She's not, I mean,
I think mostly, yeah. But I think she has done some of both. I think she's gone back and forth a bit. But
yeah, she does a lot on ours, but I don't know. I haven't talked to her since the beginning of the summer either. So I don't know where she is with that. So anyway, I wanted to raise it. It sounds like you guys ought to talk a little bit more about what is ideal for you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty flexible. I can see all different points of view.
The two things that are really coming to mind as I'm balancing is, one, I want to obviously make it a workable work. I don't want to add any work to anyone's plate.
Yes,
So
right.
there, if the argument is like this work is already being done, we just need to formalize in a different way, then that's great. So I don't want to add any work to anyone's plate. And the other one is I don't want to detract from the future of DocAssembly development on your end.
On
So
Mass Legal Help, yeah.
If it's going to make you do more DocAssembly stuff to have us do it,
Yeah.
then great. If it's going to make you do less to have us do it, then no.
No, I don't
Right,
think, I
so-
think that's the thing, is that you guys give permission and that you've got so much training and stuff up there already. And the other thing is, the more uniform and consistent we have it apart, it's really that opening page is where we need the flexibility. But you guys, it was months ago we were talking about it, but the flexibility seems to be there in that opening page. You've given developers the ability to not say it's necessarily a court form, it's an administrative form or whatever. I mean, if we could do that, that would work, as long as my developers, all 9,000 of them, can get accounts. I mean, right now we're in such a perilous place with funding and MLAC and everything right now. Anyway, I just, I think it's ridiculous to think that that's going to happen. So, and I love having our own server, but it's just like, I don't have enough time to maintain a server right now, the servers. And I love having our servers, but it just seems like it makes more sense to do it on yours. I don't know.
Well, let's have Quentin, Bryce, and I will have a conversation and then talk with the people we need to talk about. But for anyone watching this video from any other jurisdiction, we would never do this anywhere outside of
This is just because you're in Massachusetts, right? It's only for Massachusetts.
This is because we would be working on these forms anyway if they weren't being
right.
So no one get any ideas. Our wide viewership outside
our
of
wide
the people who
audience,
actually here. But yeah, so we can have those conversations and get it. But in general, I think we're open to whatever is going to maximize development of DocAssembly interviews
in Massachusetts.
Yeah, while minimizing any workload on the part of the lab. That being said, I think there's already some work that's already being done, and so the question is, can we just formalize what's a bit informal? Maybe that's the key.
Yeah. Okay. So so the all the Social Security interviews are up now, right? And where are they being hosted right now? Because there's also GBLS DocAssembly, right? Who's maintaining are you maintaining their server?
I'm maintaining their server. Yeah. I mean, and that has a handful of forums. I mean, I think what we should do is probably talk with Matt Brooks.
Yeah.
And see what his interests are there. I think probably everybody would be happy to keep their own development server, and there are folks who might want to shift to using a central server in Massachusetts.
For production.
I mean, something that GBLS is doing is it's integrated with their case management system, right? So the legal server.
Oh yeah, right.
So
yeah.
That's one of the things they're making a lot of use of is
deliver,
be able to send forms to sign and stuff, and
that
involves configuring the server in a way that probably wouldn't make sense to do on a central DocAssembly server.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Also, probably don't want to intermingle any of those databases on a single server.
Databases aren't on there. It's just like
it calls them.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's talking to the case management. So the case management is the database. Yeah.
Right. I mean, would it make sense to have? Well, you say everybody wants their own development server, so we would keep our development server, or we develop on Suffolk, or you have to think about it.
I think we'd have to think about it, but my suspicion is you could develop on Suffolk.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. And then,
yes.
As long as you don't bring on, 24 new developers.
Right. I wish. If only. We don't actually even have 24 forms, let alone 24 developers. But yeah, okay, no, yeah. I don't think we're in any danger of 24 developers. All right, I'm just trying to think, are there certain things that we do? We have these like the Twilio and stuff like that, the texting and things. And that's all on yours. I mean, we have it on ours, but really like the stuff that Michelle developed with the multi-user thing, that's on your server, not our server. Right? That would be so great if I didn't have to think about all this.
Yeah, we'd have to figure out some type of metered usage then, and like where the money came from to pay for.
If we get to that point, right? Because right now we can do 2,000 for nothing, right? Isn't that, we have some sort of thing like that. Oh, I guess the other question would be the Google Analytics, or the analytics on would that be a reason for us to stay on our server so that we could monitor that more carefully? Because you guys, that's an admin thing.
Yeah. Can you configure different analytics accounts to different interviews?
I think there is a way. I'm just going to look into that. See if I can find it.
That's the only thing I can think of at the top of my head, why we might have different servers, so that we can get into that quickly without, getting you guys involved.
There's definitely a way to, they've had more fine-grained control over Google Analytics itself. So you might be able to set up
go
different,
into the analytics so you could make us be users.
but
on
only of a
your-
subset. That would be the key
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
would be firewalling it. It would be easier if you could just say,
reports.
there's this account here and there's this account there,
right.
which I think that would be the easiest.
Yeah.
I don't think these are insoluble problems. I think the
No.
real thing we've got to talk about is whether or not this adds any work.
Okay, so what I'll do when I talk to Barb this afternoon, I will just push the obligor interview to our production server.
Yeah.
And that's Bryce's version. Mariah told me everything's all done and tested and everything, which is phenomenal. And so when I talk to Barb this afternoon, I'll just push it to production. So at least we can go somewhere and link to it. And I'll let her know that I talked to you guys. I know, Quentin, you probably already talked to Barb a little bit about this. And then we'll see, because we're just trying to get this. Poor Barb, this grant is old and we're just trying to get it wrapped up so she can sign off on it. And then we can talk about our relationship in future meetings. Does that make sense to do that?
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'm waiting, if you're talking with her, a reminder, I'm waiting for her to, one thing that happened was she's just said, hey, we need to switch the form for the Social Security interview, which we had talked about a while ago, but it was something we decided against doing at the time.
Oh.
And so I just finished that, and I am just waiting for her feedback on all those changes.
Oh, you've done the new form.
It's done now.
Okay.
Needs her feedback and then probably more testing, just because it was a really big switch, and I'm sure that there's some regressions that happened from that.
Okay.
It's like I'm pretty unlikely that it was 0 bugs that I
Okay.
have caught all the bugs with that big switch.
Okay. I'll let her know. I'm talking with her
She
too.
knows,
So
but since you're talking with her, you can remind
yeah,
her.
yeah. It doesn't hurt to remind her about that. Okay, so I feel like so as far as I know for me, I'll push our interviews I'll push the obligor interviews to production. I'll talk to Barb about to production. I probably is there a way you guys can give me a list of whatever you've worked on this summer so I can make sure I'm linking to whatever the newest interviews are on Mass Legal Help?
I think that there's so much that got done this summer that didn't
Yeah,
get onto our server live yet.
it's not live yet.
Yeah, which is one of my to-dos
Yeah, they're all very
Okay.
close.
after,
Okay,
where I've been trying to balance assembly line, this guardianship form, and then in my back of my head is like, I think it will take somebody to go through those and make sure that they're really can go live. But yeah, I don't think you're missing anything yet. In other words.
okay. So the big thing was the up to code stuff, right? That pulled all those interviews together, and Mariah put up to code everywhere she could, and she reorganized our bad conditions. She did a phenomenal job. So up to code. We're now linking to up to code with the logo everywhere on Mass Legal Help where it's relevant. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and when we finish this recording, I know there's more we can talk about with up to code, but.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So I guess there's the live interviews. I'm sorry you didn't get to them, but I'm also glad because it's just like one more thing for me to do. So let me know when that happens. I think I saw something from Sarah that she needs another plain language check with me. So I'll get back to her and let her know. And then we talked about the server issues, right? Server sharing issues. Is there anything else that I need to, am I behind on, or I owe you, or I should be paying attention to that you can think of?
Well, you don't owe us anything, so I'm glad you're getting some time to catch up. Though. But I will say I've been working on reorganizing all our style guide stuff, and our new project, like a big deliverable we have, is helping people improve their interviews. Like with some automated suggestions. So it's like, hey, the first thing we need to know is what do we think they should look like? So I've been writing some new content and reorganizing our content. You contributed a lot to that. So if you wanted to look through that and add your thoughts.
Okay. Do you have, as you're saying this, I think I remember seeing, it's like these things flash by on my phone, like the Slack and the Teams messages. I'm like, oh, he's working on this. Oh, he's working on this, in one eye, out the other eye. Do you have any kind of a style guide for translations?
Not really. I do have some coding tips for translation, like tips for what you should do in your code to make it translatable.
Okay.
But
I have a
Yep.
couple of, I'm putting together a list of, oh yeah, so where are we with the 209A? We're not there yet, right? Okay, that's
Yeah,
okay. No, that's fine. I got it to work. Remember, I did get it to work. It was just because of the Excel sheet. Mariah is posting the Mass Legal Help translations, but there's some weird things on Mass Legal Help. So I'm putting together a tutorial for her and steps and instructions for that. And as I'm doing that, I'm realizing there are probably some things that we want to include in translating interviews. For example, in an interview, when you tell people, I don't think it's so relevant for 209A, but because the court has translated almost all the 209A forms, but sometimes if you have an external link and it's only available in English, one of the translation tips or guidelines is that the English, so you have it in the translated language and you have it in the English, you put the English text is what's linked. And then you also have the Spanish or whatever the translation is. And I think we're putting those in parentheses. It's like the two times I use parentheses is in translations when you're translating what an English link is. And then for acronyms, not acronyms. Acronyms, when you use the letters for a thing. Yeah. So I just thought that might be a good thing if you're putting together your style guides. It's not, it's that would be a good concept to put in there, and I can send that along to you. And so you want me, so can you tell me where I would look to review your style guides?
Yeah, I put it on the chat. And so actually a
Oh.
lot of the content that it came from our brainstorming sessions on these meetings.
Yeah.
A lot of the content, and you wrote a lot of it. I didn't really
Okay.
change the stuff that we wrote then, but there's
Yeah.
more. You could add feedback.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
put it on the Zoom chat, but I'll put it on Teams too, so you can have it.
Okay. All right. I can more permanent. Right. Okay. And then did you guys, I don't want to go into your casual Friday, but this one question is, it looked to me like you had a lot of stuff on GitHub and you have it other places and you're trying to put it all in one place. Is that right? Or DocuSource, or did I misunderstand that?
That's part of it. So right now we had like 3 or 4 places you could find information.
Right.
We had our original GitHub doc-assembly-line. That was before we had anything else. So that was
Right.
like, hey, we can share with people to say what our project is. We had a page on SuffolkLitLab.org.
Yeah.
Was like a regular plain old HTML page, which
Right.
had some content. We had courtformsonline.org, which was more public facing, right? Like here's the forms, not like what is the project.
Yeah. Mhm.
And we're trying to move everything over to DocUSource, except for Courtforms Online. And then we also had like our style guide was in this Google Doc too.
Right.
All of that is now on DocUSource, so there's no need to go back to the Google Doc anymore.
Okay.
GitHub page that was just a repository to store like labeling guidance and stuff. That's totally archived.
So all the GitHub stuff is now in DocUSource.
Yeah, it's still on GitHub in a way, but it's just it's all DocUSource. So there's one website for the front user-facing stuff and one website for what our project is and how you can replicate what we did.
Okay, and then the sheet the sheet for listing forms, that's still in Google Drive, right?
That
Or
is
is
still
that-
in Google Drive.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. That doesn't
Although
belong in either. Yeah.
Aubrey did move all that stuff over in the Trello, actually.
Oh, right. That's great. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you mean like the list of forms to be automated? Is that what you meant? Caroline?
Yeah, and what stages they're in and stuff like that, right? That was, I mean, I remember Aubrey went through
Aubrey
all
moved
that stuff.
over.
Yeah, okay.
That's so I guess we should take that down too, or mark it as like deprecated.
So we're just looking at, all right, yeah, I remember that conversation, and I remember Aubrey doing this unbelievable job. So, and fast. I mean, what is she? I don't know.
Yeah, she did an excellent job.
Yeah, yeah. So she gone. We're in a new
No,
year,
she's
right?
she's still at the law school, but she's
She is.
she's a clinical fellow, so she's working now more on some project stuff that isn't necessarily assembly line.
Okay, but she's is she in her third year now?
Yep.
Is this her last year? Okay. All right. Wow. Okay, I'll stop asking you questions and getting caught up. I think those are my general things.
All right. And then I just I've been working on the Explorer. I shared some of this in that backend developers page, so you can find links to everything. But I'll just give a quick visual so that people can see what's going on. So we have like a prototype wireframe sort of thing up. Although it does have functionality in it, but it has a lot of lorem ipsum. So it's all perfect. So there's something, sort of what is the Form Explorer? And then the main thing that I've been working on is we now have lists of Utah and Michigan forms. They're delineated by the groupings that their websites have for them. So these are the groupings that are given by their folks.
These are DocAssembly forms, David?
No, these are all PDF forms.
Oh.
So if you click in, you can actually see the PDF. Utah originally actually didn't have the form fields in, so we've been able to use the batch processes in Adobe to do all of the Utah forms. So they all have their first draft bit. But of course, they come in with the pre-default names. So I've built a little form normalizer, which will take the auto-generated names and try to convert them into our names. And so you see here are the green fields are the fields that it was successful in changing them into our style. The other ones are the ones where it wasn't. Right now, this is running on a small, it's only handling like 5 or 6 different of our standardized fields. So like name and address stuff. And it's only trained on like 10 forms and then supplemented with a set of, like a half a dozen or maybe a dozen regexes that look for things that are common. But this is the idea, is that eventually we'll be able to leverage these collections of forms such that we can go in, we can find information about them, and you can use this to help understand what your existing form, if you're a court, you can use this to help understand what forms you might want to prioritize for creating interviews. And then you can use this as a jumping off point to create your interviews, because you'll have a form here with standardized names or mostly standardized names. You can also find stuff about like similar forms based upon shared data fields. So you can see sort of forms that are similar. And eventually we'll get to the point, right now I don't have a good way of doing this at scale here because there are so many connections, but eventually we'll have a way to explore the interconnections between forms based upon their similarity of fields and such. And then you'll be able to, explore them this way and then link in again to those details. But that's just where we're at now. I just thought I'd share a little so it was on the recording. That's that.
You just want to show off how smart you are.
No, I wanted it on the recording. I wanted to have something we could point at.
I know. I'm totally blown away, David. I'm just absolutely gobsmacked.
The classifier isn't so great yet. Most of its functionality is coming about from the regular expressions, which is actually not surprising. You can get a lot if you do that. And there's not a whole lot of context in the forms to pull in to predict the normalized field. So like we take like what type of form it is, the name of the form, the field directly before this field, the question, the field numbers, like is it the first or second or third, and then like the percentage of the way the form you're through. So like is it at the beginning of the form or the end of the form? So those are all features that we feed in to help make the predictions. And right now I'm
by text. Is that something?
Yeah, and then the text is, and then I'm actually vectorizing the text using Word2Vec to try to get some semantic similarity out, so it will catch things. But I actually also want to do like just a standard bag of words, because there are a lot of terms of art that show up that I'm sure Word2Vec wasn't trained on, and
and even, some like amalgam words that, we might not be splitting out. I did build a little thing to try to split out combined words, but there might be some, portmanteaus and other things that just having a bag of words based upon the corpus of the text within these guys would be useful. But that's sort of, subsequent versions. This was all just get the workflow so that now we actually download things, we put them through some stuff, do some processing, and then we can generate pages based upon them.
Now
So
it
all
can
that
get
work,
interesting.
yeah, now it can get interesting. So that workflow is there. So now it's like about making the classifier better, figuring out ways to visualize the graphs that will get better as you make the classification better. But so like the foundation's laid. So that was that.
That's great. And I don't know if you saw that I found the 5 lines of Python code.
I did. I liked that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would be harder because it's not documented. You just have to try stuff and see what works.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I was having a hard time finding documentation.
Yeah, documentation. It's an ISO standard, so it's kind of documented. But then how do you use different tools, which are just like, hey, here's the PDF, has a list of dictionaries and stuff that follow that standard. That's not easy to figure out the correspondence to.
But yeah, so that'll probably be an easy one to implement. That's another reason why I just didn't focus on it right away, is because I knew we eventually be able to figure it out. So I thought the harder thing was getting the normalizer ready. So that's where that is at, and so that's exciting.
How hard was it to do the batch processing? I'm just wondering. I mean, I guess eventually we'll get to a point where someone has a new form that isn't in the world.
Yeah.
Where the idea of batch processing won't solve it. But to batch process 50 states is not a big deal, really.
No, it's not.
It's just like a one-off. How important is it for us to get that ability to add new labels is my question.
I'm thinking maybe not. It might not be important at all. If we take especially if we go through the process of batch doing the 50, because the rationale is we wanted something, what we're trying to do is build something that will encourage states to pick it up and move with it, to make this thing that looks like a gargantuan project they can't do and start to think that maybe they can do something. And so if we take like the CS student we'll have next year, and they seem interested in doing web scraping stuff, and we assign them like to scrape all the 50 pages, all the 50 states, like as one of their projects, then we can just get that corpus and then just batch process each of the 50 states. And it needs a little bit of babysitting because of the way that the batch processors work in Adobe Pro, but not much babysitting. You can, if you can leave it and go get some coffee, but if something comes up, sometimes you have to make an action. But some of that actually could probably be handled by doing some better error checking on the PDF files that you're having it batch process before you tell it to batch process them. I didn't weed anything out. I could have probably easily. But yeah, so I think that really that no longer seems like a big technical thing that we need to build. I mean, we might still want to try to build it out.
Yeah, it's the one-offs, that's the harder part, right? Like, if you don't have a way to tell somebody.
So I was actually thinking
variables and run it off one time. That's hard to, for example, like Social Security one's a good example. I had to do that new form. If I didn't have the Acrobat and had to do that one field at a time,
yeah,
it would have been impossible. And that's not a union process.
Yeah, so that might be. Yeah, so you might.
But that's anyway. Like I kind of know there's those scenarios,
Yeah.
but that's really helpful to know. Like for the 50 states, like it's
For the 50 states, I think we can get a good chunk of what we want done with the batch processing. But I then was thinking about workflow, and I was thinking about when you have this form, what is the next step?
Right.
And I like the idea of being able to say, well, take this form and run it through the Weaver. But these forms themselves aren't quite ready for the Weaver in that, you might need to add a field or delete some fields.
Right. That's part 2 that's missing.
So
that's a
it
different
might,
part of it, though, in some ways,
Yeah.
right? Like adding the
Yeah.
fields automatically is different from the manual tweaking you'll have
Yeah.
to do.
which is why I was thinking that from a manual tweaking standpoint, the next thing might be just to build, build something like Documates that was at the front end of the Weaver workflow, which is like a double check your form fields. You could leverage the same field normalization and stuff that we were doing here. So if you didn't pull it from here, if you were making it from afresh, it would would check those. So like the start state there would be you have a PDF that you've auto made generated fields on, or a PDF that doesn't have any fields. Put it in here, and then we can help.
David, do you have a system either in your batch processing, or would it be in the Weaver, about character limitations? You know, I mean, would you flag fields? So, I mean, I guess the thing is, you might have, if you have similar labels and similar fields, you might know that these fields are always limited to a certain number of characters, and these fields should always have appendices. And I realize some of it is at the DocAssembly side, and some of it's the PDF side. But I wonder if that would be also, that seems to be one of the big sticking points. And I mean, conceptually, some fields will have a run over into an appendix, and some fields won't. Or does that not, would that be more when you're actually processing it individually?
Well, I think that might be addressed with how we define some of our common fields. Like I can imagine you could like say like a phone number is an X digit long thing. Like, you know, the problem is that when you get into like, and this is a question that, and I want to sit down with some folks at some point and talk about field names and some of the standardized field names we want to look for. But there's going to be like this large class of, right now what the classifier does is like, I have a list of like a dozen standardized field names, and it says, is it one of these or is it something else? And so there's a lot of something else. And so the question is like, how much of the something else do we want to try to
put in the one of these? Yeah,
right?
Like affidavits, right? So an affidavit field, right?
You could have something like, if it's a big multi-line text field and it has a certain bit of text before it, says, give us your statement, blah, blah, blah. And maybe we could say it's an affidavit, and maybe there's something that goes along with that. But that really, to me, feels like that's a definition. So like there's these two talking to each other thing. There's like the definition of what we think fields are. Like what do we think are some of the Platonic fields that exist? Name, address, affidavit, statement, etc. And then the ability to see those fields. So the hard part actually is figuring out what that list is first.
The first list, right? Yeah.
Now, some of this process helps with that. Like one of the things when I chose forms to train, I just ran through and I looked for groupings of forms that, shared common features. And then I found like the most, I was treating it like a network graph where each form was like a thing, and you drew a line from it to every other form that shared a data field, right?
Yeah.
And so you can sort of get groupings of fields that have a common set of fields.
Yeah.
And so I use that to sort of prioritize forms to train on, because these were the forms that had the most fields used by the most other forms. So you can use that exploration can also help us figure out some of what we want to like define as, these Platonic fields. But I think we probably have, 80% of what they are. I mean, it's demographic information, it's, dates, signatures, I mean, we have most of that. So the question is like, for those free response things, how do we want to like deal with them? Do we want to say like anything that's free text that's not one of these guys is we want to call it, free text? And then do we want to have that like overlay, like change the name of the field to free text or whatever? Or do we want to leave it as whatever the idiosyncratic name was for it, and then have someone have to manually change it to be like this or that? But those are sort of the conversations we're getting close to having to have.
Just a quick thought, and I know this probably isn't the right place to have the whole conversation, would be just make them follow Python name conventions. So with lowercase underscores under like 30 characters. So try to find a way to get to that from the draft name Acrobat assigns it. That would probably help, people be able to get into, they'll understand the pain point of that weird variable name once they start using it in DocAssembly, or maybe even at the point where they have to add a label to it for the interview. So
it's just,
I was gonna say it should be the variable name, maybe minus, not the whole,
not use
limit.
up all 30 characters, right?
Don't,
That's what you're
don't
saying.
use up the whole variable
so give
name
people
limit.
a little bit of flexibility. That's a good point.
I mean, 30 isn't a limit. It's just like, it would be crazy to have something longer than 30. You could do 80 is the actual.
There are
width of-
lots of default ones that are longer than 30.
Yeah,
It's
they're
funny 'cause
longer.
it just takes all the
Yeah.
text like in the line above and makes it the variable name.
So maybe there's a shorter length than 30. That was a good point, because I don't think it would be comfortable to work with something longer than 30. And if you're going to want to customize it, you're right, maybe adding room for like 10 extra characters, good idea. So
Mhm,
make the
mhm.
ones you create no more than 20.
Something
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Mhm.
And
Well,
then
that's a thought, yeah. So
differentiating them
there-
if they're the same, right?
So there's a benefit, yeah, to like renaming the ones just to sort of move it in the direction of
Yeah.
Keeping them short.
keeping them short and keeping them digestible by our process. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I
so
like
that's
the idea
actually
of something like the document editor, and you click a button that says normalize field names, and they're all normalized, and they all would work as is. Like,
Right.
that's really powerful too. Whereas if they have spaces and parentheses and other weird symbols in them that Acrobat leaves in, you don't get that.
yeah, we can definitely do that. That's okay. So that's useful. That's part of what I want to think about for the that's one of the reasons I want to have a conversation with someone who knows the variable stuff better. All right, I shouldn't even say better who knows the variable stuff, since I'm not going to even pretend to know it. Like how we've implemented it. But yeah, but that's a good one. All right.
That's all the stuff I've been adding to the documentation or clarifying. Some of it was already there, but
Yeah. Well, maybe my first step then is to read through what's there, and then can use that as a jumping off point. But yeah, we could very easily get it to the point where like, yeah, interesting to like take it's a fun problem to think about if you have a string of just text that's like a paragraph long, to distill it down to like 2 words that would make some amount of sense to the reader as to what they would be. I can actually think of some ways to do that, so that might be fun.
there's some like summarization algorithms that are already out there, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like I'm thinking of like almost like
Remove the articles.
yeah. Well, you could
etc.,
also,
etc.
since we also have the entire corpus of all these forms to run off of, so you could actually sort of treat it as a like a topic modeling problem. So you treat each of the individual variable names sort of as the super long variable names as documents, and you're trying to figure out what are the topics that documents talk about. It's actually might be more generalizable.
I have to go,
All right.
and I before I go, I just want to highlight that.
Is this something you want
Um,
recorded, or do you want to like us
No,
not
no,
record and then you want to go?
recorded. It's fine.
All right.
That our meetings on Friday at
They run later?
12:30 have generally been running
Mhm.
approximately half an hour later than anticipated.
Yep.
So just something to think about, that's all.
Yes, this is something to think about, and it's perhaps a predictable outcome of the combination of the Tuesday and Friday.
But we
It does fit within the overall time span. That the problem is it moves into casual Fridays.
Yeah. So I gotta go, but I'll see y'all later. Bye.
All right. Cheers. All right. Any more that anyone wants recorded?